we are still on AWS. This time around, we want to look at auto scaling, right? So far, we've seen that there are several resources we can use on AWS. Sometimes we need more, sometimes we need less. So let's look at EC2 instances, for example. Let's say we have application servers and we require so many, due to traffic, we require additional servers. So what do we need to do? We'll create additional instances. So, and what happens when the peak period is gone? We want to reduce, okay? So we can have a situation where we need to scale out, that's increase our resources, or scale in, right? Reducing our resources. Okay, so there's a feature on AWS that allows us to automatically scale, right? So let's search for auto scaling, okay? AWS Auto Scaling, right? This is a feature that we can use, okay? So with auto scaling, we can see that we can optimize applications in quickly, right? When you say optimize, you are able to make use of the best of the resources, right? So with auto scaling, you can configure and manage scaling for your scalable AWS resources through a scaling plan. So there's need for us to have a scaling plan. So you can optimize for availability, for cost, or a balance of both, right? So now, how does auto scaling work? Okay, let's see how to get started, okay? So these are scalable resources, right? So it depends on how we want to scale our resources. We might be looking at searching using CloudFormation stack, right? Especially CloudFormation is an alternative to Terraform, right? Built by AWS, but only works with AWS. Unlike Terraform, you can use Terraform to provision resources in AWS, in Azure, in GCP, right? But CloudFormation is strictly for AWS. So you can also search with tag, and we can search with use EC2 Auto Scaling group. So let's look at this. So do we have any scaling group? No, I've not created any so far. Okay, now what we can do is to go to EC2 services, EC2, let's go to EC2. You see that this feature is attached to the EC2, okay? So let's scroll down to, let's see what we have. So right here, we have auto scaling, okay? So over there, we were asked about auto scaling group, but we've not created any. So we can create an auto scaling group right away. So we can create an auto scaling group. So to create an auto scaling group, what do? We want to click on auto scaling group. Now, so EC2 auto scaling features have no additional fees beyond the service fees for the EC2 or other resources that is used, okay? So it is free, right, to have auto scaling group, okay? So with auto scaling group, you can specify the minimum, right, that you want. Let's say we are looking at EC2 instances. You can set a minimum at, say, oh, you want minimum of 2 instances, right? But the desired capacity could be 3. And you might say you want a maximum of 10, right? Depending on the situation, right? Scale to 10. And when the peak period is out, you can scale in, right? To maybe 2, depending, right? But the desired capacity could be 3. So one needs to determine all of this. So let's see what we can achieve with this. Let's create an auto scaling group, right? I always like to create the group first so that we can have some clarity. Remember when we looked at load balancing, we created target groups first. Okay, so I want to create auto scaling groups first. So create a group. So let's say this group is test, auto scaling test, right? I can see auto scaling tests. Okay, auto scaling test. So let's see, launch template. Do I have any launch templates? I've not created any, so I can create a launch template. Okay, the launch template. So let's see. So what launch template do you want to create? We want to create AS test template. Let's call it template. Auto scaling test template. Okay. So description, you can leave that as is. So what else? Do you want a tag? We can choose to have a tag. Is there a source template? There's no source template here. So let's keep going. So now, what do we want to, what kind of AMI, Amazon Machine image do we want? So let's browse available. We can use recently launched, okay? Or we can browse more AMI. So let's see recently launched. You can see recently launched. We launched Red Hat Server, right? This is what we launched recently. So we can use this, or we can choose to go and browse more AMIs, okay? So do I want to include instance type in the template or not? So I want to specify this, right? This is the instance type I want to include, right? So if I want to look at other instances, I can compare instance types here, okay? So key pair login, I want to use a particular key, okay? And I can choose to create a new key pair. Network settings, okay? I can select an existing security group, or I can choose not to include that, okay? So I want to, for this, I'm looking for the several options we have, right? So this is my default. I can take this depending on what I want, right? I can select that, or I can choose not to specify, right? I can choose not to include in launch templates. Okay, so I can decide to choose an existing security group or create a new security group, right? So I can say security group, I can create one afresh, right? I can create a security group. So I can create a security group. I can say I can call it test AS-test security group, right? I can create a security group. I can provide a description, right? Those are options, right? So I can go ahead and add security group rule, okay? I can add security group. I can say, okay, SSH 22. I can say from anywhere. I can say, okay, this is fine. I can also proceed. I can also proceed to say I want to add port 8080, right? I can open port 8080 for any of these instances. I can say from anywhere, right? Depending, right? So these are some things we can set up here. Okay. I can go ahead and check out this, right? Is this something I want to consider? Storage volume, I can leave it at default, right? Then I could choose to add a new volume, right? So these are options, right? So once we are done with all of this, let's be sure we've created everything we need to create. So once we are done with all of this, we've set up security group rule and okay. Okay, so we have everything all set up. So we can launch templates, okay? Oh, description is required. Let's put something there. Allows, you can say allows, okay, allows auto scale for, this is for auto scaling test. This is for auto scaling tests, right? You can put something like this, auto scaling test. Okay, auto scaling test. Okay, so I want to create a launch template. Okay, so now that this is done, you can see I have just one launch template. So let's go back to where we were. So right here, I was prompted to enter a launch template. So let me refresh this. So I have this launch template now. So version default, right? So let's see what we get. So launch template, I want to click on next. So VPC, I'm choosing default. Okay, availability zones, right? I can come here. What availability zones do I want? I can, these are subnets, right? And availability zones. So I can choose multiple, right? I can choose multiple. I can choose multiple, right? To ensure high availability. So instance type requirements, T2 micro. So here, if you want to override launch templates, this is what to do. So you can skip to review. You can click on next. Okay. So do I want to use load balancer? Do I want to attach to an existing load balancer? Do I want to just leave it as it is? Right? Do I want to attach to a new load balancer? Which means for this, I'll need to create a new load balancer. For this, I want to use an existing load balancer. And for this, I can choose not to attach to load balancer. Okay, so I want to go ahead and look at these other options. Do I want to enable group metrics collection with CloudWatch, right? So these are options, right? We don't have to select any of those. So now we need to look at our desired capacity, okay? So what's the desired capacity? So we can say, okay, we want it to be 2. So in terms of minimum capacity, let's set this as 3, okay? In terms of minimum capacity, you might say, oh, at worst, right? Let it be 2, okay? So in terms of maximum capacity, we can set it as 5, right? So if for any reason, right, you want 2 instances created, right? So that's minimum capacity. So desired, right? At every point in time, we would like to have 3, right? So maximum, if systems requirements increases. So we want as much as 5 instances created, right? So that's that. Do we have scaling policy, right? We've not created any scaling policy, so we can choose none here. So instance scaling protection, so you can choose this if you want to enable instance scaling protection, right? Scaling protection. So if that's what you want to look at, we can select that, but we are not looking at considering that. So I want to click on next. So if you want to add notification, right, it's possible to add notification. So if you want to add notification, you set it up here. So you can click on next. If you want to add a tag, right, you can create several tags, maybe name or whatever field you want, and you set up a value, right? So these are options you can consider. So now let's go ahead and review everything we've done. Okay, so once we review, you want to create auto scaling group. So after creating our auto scaling group, you see what's happening. The first thing we did was to create auto scaling group, which prompted us to let's create a launch template, right? We went ahead to say we are creating an auto scaling group, and that prompted us to create a launch template, right? So that's been done. So let's look at what we have here. We see is updating capacity, right? 3 is the desired, 2 is the minimum, 5 is the maximum, okay? So your desired could also be the same as minimum, right? But it depends, right, on how your system requirement is, okay? So after doing all of this, we want to go to launch configurations, right? You want to go to launch configurations, but let's be sure that this capacity is fully okay. The old auto scaling group, okay. So this has been created successfully, okay. So it's updating capacity. Let's just take a look at what we have going on here. You can see this is the desired, as we said, this is the minimum, this is the maximum, okay? So this is the name of the auto scaling group. Okay, so these are the different availability zones, and these are the subnets relating to the availability zones, right? So what else sticks out here? So let's go ahead and look at our launch configuration. So we can create a launch configuration, right? We can create a launch configuration. So let's see, just a minute. Let's just take a peep at our EC2 dashboard, right? So you can see what we have here. We have 10 instances in all, right? Look at this. 10 instances was what we had before, right? So with what we created now, you can see 3. It has become 13, right? So there are 3 new instances being created in line with our configuration, right? You can see what we've got here. So what happens is 3 instances have been created based on what we specified, right? Remember, we stated that the desired is 3 instances, right? A minimum could be 2, right? But the desired is 3. So let's see what happens. Let's go to the EC2 dashboard, okay? So we want to come to the EC2 dashboard. We can click on the running. So we see there are 3 running instances, okay? So these are the 3 running instances. So we didn't enable monitoring, so you can see we have 3 instances. So I just want us to take a look at something, okay? There are 3 running instances. Let's see what we have with them. 3 running instances. So this is the desired, right? So based on requirements, this will be created. But let's see what happens, right? Remember, we stated that the minimum we want is 2, okay? So what happens if we decide to terminate one of these instances, right? Let's see what happens when we terminate this one in particular, right? Let's terminate this instance, right? Are you sure you want to terminate? Okay, we terminate, okay? So now I've terminated this successfully, right? So let's see what happens, right? So we have a terminated instance, right? We have 2 here, right? So what happens? We said our desired is 3, right? And we also said minimum could be 2 and maximum could be 5, right? So what happens? So we have 2 now. So let's see the total that we have. Remember, we had 13, right? We had 13 instances. 1 has been terminated, right? We have 2 running. So technically, we have 2 instances running, right? We have 2 running. So, but remember, we set minimum could be 2. Desired is 3, maximum 5. So if for any reason we realize that, oh, system requirement has now increased based on usage, we will see that another one will be created, making a 3rd one, then a 4th one could get created, then a 5th one could be created, right? But why is nothing getting created now, right? Because we said minimum could be 2. So let's see what happens if we decide to go ahead and terminate. Remember, we have 13 in all, right? Including the stopped, running, and terminated, right? So let's see what happens if we decide to terminate one more instance, right? Let's terminate one of these instances and let's see what happens. So let's refresh. This has been terminated. So let's see what happens. You see, this has become 14, right? Remember, we had 13. 1 is shutting down, right? So we had 13. And all of a sudden, this is being created. Another one is being created automatically. This was the one we terminated. Let's drag this down. See, we have 14 instances now. It used to be 13, if you remember. So we stopped an instance, we terminated an instance, right? Then all of a sudden, this started. Let's go to the dashboard and take a view of this. You see, we have 14 instances now. So this is the new one that is being created, right? This is the new one that is being created, right? So what happens if we decide to, remember, we have 14 in all, right? When we checked, 14 instances in all. Let's see what happens. And this is fully initialized, right? So let's see what happens if we decide to terminate this again, right? So let's see, let's terminate this instance. Let's terminate this instance, right? So once we terminate this, you see, this is terminated, right? Let's refresh. It says it's successfully terminated. Let's see what happens with that. So we have just 1 at the moment, only 1 running, right? So let's refresh again. Hopefully the next one that was created would have kicked in. or we go up here, right? Let's go there and see that we have 15. You see, it has increased to 15. Another instance is being created. See, so we now have another one. Let's see, any other one running, pending, right? Another one is about to get created. So this is the capability of auto scaling, right? There's a lot we can do with it. So as much as possible, just try to explore to get the best out of it. So it's been a great time. So let's see in another session.